Her name is Zuri. She was only 11 years old. With no father, no home, and only her pregnant mother and unborn sibling, the streets became their reality. Each day was a struggle, searching for food, staying safe, and holding on to hope. But one tragic afternoon changed everything. A reckless hit-and-run driver struck her mother, leaving her bleeding and barely conscious. She was rushed to the nearest hospital, only to face another painful blow. Without a deposit, there would be no treatment. Zuri had nothing, no money, no relatives to help. On the edge of losing the only family she had left, she was told to take her mother away. Yet fate intervened. At that moment, Zuri encountered the billionaire CEO of the city's leading hospital. In tears, she dropped to her knees, clinging to his leg. "Please, sir, I have no money. Don't let my mother die." What happened next would not only surprise you, but also change the way you see life. It reminds us how truly small the world is. So sit back, relax, and listen closely, because this is a story you won't easily forget. And if you're joining us for the first time, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this. If this one moves you, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. But Zuri was not born into hardship. Her early life was filled with warmth, the laughter of neighbors, her mother's soft prayers, and the strong embrace of her father. Their rented bungalow in Surulere, Lagos was modest. The paint peeled at the corners, but the air was rich with the smell of fried plantain, hibiscus flowers in the compound, and the evening breeze carrying the scent of roasting corn from the roadside. Her father, Chuka, was not wealthy, but he was deeply respected. He worked for a logistics company, leaving each morning in a neatly pressed shirt, carrying the scent of shaving cream and talcum powder. Before leaving, he always kissed Zuri on the forehead and repeated the same words. "Your name means beautiful, Zuri, and that's what your life will be." Those words filled her with pride she could not yet explain. Her mother, Ada, was a full-time homemaker, gentle in nature yet strong in love. She kept their home clean, warm, and filled with laughter. On some evenings, when the generator buzzed and the neighborhood settled into quiet, Chuka would play old high-life records and dance with Ada in the living room, while Zuri giggled from the couch. They didn't have much, but to Zuri it felt like everything. Life was simple and safe. Then came the evening that shattered it all. The day began as usual. Chuka left for work with his familiar smile, promising to bring suya for dinner. Ada hummed softly as she cooked jollof rice, while Zuri played with her notebook, doodling instead of solving math problems. By late afternoon, Ada set 3 plates on the table, as always. Zuri's stomach growled in anticipation, but as the sky darkened, Chuka still had not returned. At first, Ada assumed he was delayed by Lagos traffic. She turned on the old TV, flipping through channels, trying to silence the unease growing inside her. Then the calls began. Unclear voices from neighbors and a colleague of Chuka's, hesitant and careful. One said there had been an accident on the highway. Another mentioned a company vehicle. No one gave details. Ada's hands trembled as she held her phone. "Zuri, go inside and do your homework," she whispered, her voice unsteady. But Zuri stayed, watching her mother's pale face. Minutes later, a sharp knock echoed at the door. A young motorcycle rider from their area stood outside, sweat soaking his shirt, pity heavy in his eyes. "Auntie, I'm sorry. Your husband..." Ada gripped his arm. "My husband? Where is he?" "Where is Chuka?" The young man swallowed hard. "They say he didn't make it." The motor hit hard. He was on his way to work. The road. Ada's legs gave way. She sank to the floor, hands over her mouth. Zuri wrapped her arms around her trembling mother. A wall had fallen across their lives. There was no body to bury, no final goodbye. The accident was so severe that Chuka's remains were unrecognizable. The police returned only his burnt wallet, his work ID, and a single shirt button found near the wreck. The funeral was brief and hollow. Neighbors offered condolences, murmuring, "God gives and God takes." Zuri sat quietly, clutching her father's wristwatch, which no longer ticked. In the days that followed, the house grew silent. Not the peaceful kind, but a silence so heavy it made breathing feel like effort. Each night, Zuri still waited for the sound of his key at the gate, his footsteps in the hallway, his familiar voice calling, "Zuri, my beautiful girl." But all she heard was silence. And silence, she was learning, could be louder than anything in the world. Yet this was only the beginning. Bills do not wait for grief. They come on time, in brown envelopes and phone calls without sympathy, in the landlord's knocks that carry more threat than patience. It had been only a month since Chuka's sudden passing. As Ada's strength began to waver, the house that once smelled of jollof rice now carried only dust. The laughter had faded, replaced by the shuffle of unpaid bills and the weak hum of a generator that rarely ran because fuel had become too costly. Ada's belly had grown heavy, the baby inside kicking as if unaware of the struggles waiting outside. Zuri, just 11 years old, noticed everything. The way her mother sat longer before standing, the pauses in her sentences as if her thoughts had drifted away. School had already ended for Zuri. The first term after her father's death went unpaid, and even the headmistress who once cared for her now avoided Ada's calls. One evening, when Zuri stared too long at her folded uniform, Ada whispered, "It's not my fault, Zuri, you'll go back to school. I promise." But promises couldn't keep the lights on. The first to make their hardship undeniable was the landlord. By reputation, he was not considered cruel. A plump, middle-aged businessman in starched white clothes and gold-rimmed glasses. He had always greeted Chuka with respect when rent was paid on time. But now, without Chuka's monthly transfers, his eyes had changed. The first month after the funeral, he knocked gently. "Madam Ada, sorry for your loss, but the rent is due." Ada pleaded for more time, explaining she was still trying to manage things. He gave her 2 weeks, but by the end of that period, nothing had improved. The logistics company paid Chuka's death benefits, but most of it disappeared into debts, hospital bills, funeral costs, church contributions, and even transport for relatives who came to mourn. What remained barely bought food for a few weeks. The landlord's second visit was colder. "This is business," he said, avoiding Ada's eyes. "If you can't pay, I have no choice." By the third visit, there was no sympathy left. He arrived with 2 strong young men who didn't threaten or raise their voices. They simply began to remove things. The television, the standing fan gifted by Chuka's office, the plastic dining table, Zuri's mattress, the small gas cooker, all were loaded into the landlord's truck. Zuri stood silently in the corner, clutching her school bag, which now held only a notebook and her father's wristwatch. It felt as if her life was being carried away piece by piece. "Please." Ada's voice broke as she followed them to the door. "I just need more time. I'm pregnant. I have a child. Where will we go?" The landlord shrugged, turning away. "Pay the rent and you'll get your things back. Otherwise, their payment for the debt." When they left, Ada leaned against the door, trembling before sinking to the floor with her face buried in her hands. Zuri watched in silence. That night, they slept on mats borrowed from a neighbor, who whispered, "Sorry, but you know how Lagos is." For the first time, Zuri understood her father's words. Life can change without warning. She just hadn't imagined it could change so completely, so fast. When the landlord finally told them to leave by the end of the week, Ada knew there was only one option left: family. Despite the silence from Chuka's relatives since the funeral, she believed blood would not abandon them. On a hot Monday morning, Ada wrapped her belly with a faded cloth, dressed Zuri in her cleanest outfit, and they set off for Oshodi, where Chuka's elder brother lived. The journey took 3 Danfo rides and a long walk under the burning sun. By the time they arrived, Zuri's slippers were dusty and sweat clung to her back. At the gate, the gateman chewing sugarcane looked them over. "Who you find?" he asked. "My husband's elder brother," Ada replied, forcing a tired smile. "Please tell him Ada is here." The gateman frowned. "Oganode." From the balcony above, a bronze-skinned woman with sharp eyes leaned over, whispered to someone inside, then vanished. Minutes later, the gate swung open with a force that made Ada step back. Chuka's brother appeared, his expression unreadable. Before Ada could speak, a voice cut through the air, his wife's. "What are you doing here?" "Haven't you done enough?" Ada stiffened. "Done enough? I don't understand." "You killed my brother," the woman accused. "Everyone knows women like you use charms to trap men." Zuri snapped her head up. "My mommy is not a witch," she shouted, her small voice trembling with anger. The woman narrowed her eyes. "Little girl, be quiet." Chuka's brother stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "We never supported this marriage, Ada. Now my brother is gone and you expect to live off us. Leave before you bring misfortune into my home." Ada's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Holding Zuri's hand tightly, she turned and walked away. They hadn't even been offered water. The next stop was far away, Ada's childhood town in the Amber State. She thought, if my husband's family has turned me away, surely my parents will not. They borrowed transport money from Mama Peace, a street vendor selling cars near the bridge. The road was long and filled with potholes, and Zuri drifted in and out of sleep as the Danfo jolted along. When they arrived, the tall white iron gates of Ada's parents' home stood before them, framed by orange trees heavy with fruit. Ada knocked, her heart racing. The door opened, revealing the woman she had called mother all her life. For a moment they only stared. "Mama, it's me, Ada," she whispered. Her mother's eyes showed no joy. She stepped forward not to welcome them in but to block the doorway. "Go back, Ada." Her father appeared behind, his glasses slipping down his nose. "We told you never to return. But I have nowhere else. My husband is gone. I am pregnant. This is Zuri, your granddaughter." Her father shook his head slowly, his words cutting deep. "You are not our child," Ada froze. "What do you mean?" Her father glanced at her mother, then back at her. "We adopted you. Over 40 years ago, a man sold you to us, saying he found you abandoned in the market. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, but you were never ours. And now you come here bringing shame." Ada's knees weakened. "All my life." All this time, her mother's voice was sharp. "We have our own children now. Leave this place. You were never meant to return." The gates shut with a metallic clang that echoed down the empty street. Ada stood still as if the air around her had turned to stone. Zuri tugged at her wrapper. "Mommy, where will we go?" Ada knelt, tears falling freely. She cupped Zuri's face in her hands. "Then we have only each other." In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a vow to survive, even when the world left them without a place. Lagos hides many broken stories in plain sight. Beneath the noise of Danfo's impatient Okadas and flashing billboards promising a better life, lie shadows where people exist but never belong. Ada and Zuri drifted through these shadows. After rejection from both families, they wandered for days, moving from one street corner to another. One night, they tried sleeping in front of a closed shop, but at dawn, the shop owner kicked Ada's leg. "Move before I call the police." Another night, they curled up behind a mechanic workshop, thinking the smell of engine oil would keep people away. But when the mechanics arrived, they shouted, threw dirty rags at them, and chased them off. Finally, they found a place under the Echo Bridge, a stretch of concrete where the sound of cars above never stopped, and the wind smelled of exhaust and salt from the lagoon. Others were there too, people with tired faces, plastic bags for pillows, and restless eyes. At first, Ada was afraid to lie down. One hand rested on her belly, the other gripped Zuri's arm. That night, Zuri stayed awake, listening to the trucks overhead and the shuffle of footsteps in the dark. Somewhere nearby, a deep cough echoed again and again. Days turned into weeks. Zuri quickly learned the rules of the street. Never sleep too deeply. Keep your slippers close, hide your money where no one would think to look, and never ask too much about anyone's past. Sometimes, area boys came, young men with cold eyes and empty bottles in their hands. "Madam, this is our place. If you want to stay, you must pay," Ada would plead. "We have nothing. Please, we are only trying to survive." Sometimes they left. Sometimes they didn't. One night, a drunk leaned too close, his breath hot and sour. Zuri stepped in front of her mother, fists clenched. "Leave my mommy alone." The man laughed, harsh and mocking. "This one get mouth." But he stepped back. Maybe it was the defiance in her eyes. Even through the struggle, there were sparks of kindness. A woman known as Mama Peace, who sold cars near the bridge during the day, noticed them. Sometimes she wrapped 2 balls of Ara in brown paper and quietly placed them in Zuri's hand. "Don't let shame destroy you, my child," she once told her. "Better to beg and live than pretend and die." She even allowed Zuri to fetch water from her drum, warning her never to waste a drop. On good days, Zuri and Ada found scraps of bread left behind at roadside stalls. On bad days, they survived on water, ignoring the hunger twisting in their stomachs. The rain was the hardest. Water leaked through cracks in the bridge, pooling into cold puddles that soaked their sleeping space. Their thin nylon sheet offered little protection. Zuri would curl against Ada, feeling her mother shiver. Ada rubbed her daughter's back gently, even as her own teeth chattered. At times, Zuri woke to find her mother staring into the darkness. "Mommy, are you okay?" she would whisper. Ada forced a smile. "I'm just thinking of how to get us out of here." Zuri never pressed. She knew her mother was holding on by threads, and she didn't want to add to her burden. Yet every morning, as the first light slipped beneath the bridge and turned the concrete gold, Ada whispered the same promise: "We will leave this place. We will find a room. You will go back to school. You will wear your uniform again." Zuri would nod, clinging to those words as though they were the only rope keeping her from falling into the pit the world had dug beneath them. Neither knew how or when, but they both believed it, because believing was all they had. The turning point came one afternoon when hunger cut like a blade. Ada leaned against a concrete pillar, one hand resting on her swollen belly, shielding her eyes from the harsh sun. "Mommy," Zuri said softly, "we can't just sit here every day. Maybe we should work." Ada looked at her, an 11-year-old, thin from missed meals, yet her eyes still carried a stubborn light. "Work doing what?" Zuri answered quickly as though she had planned it for days. "I can sell pure water. Other children do it. I see them in traffic. I can do it too." Ada hesitated. She had sworn her daughter would never live that life, barefoot in the streets, dodging cars for a few coins. But hunger makes pride seem foolish. By evening, Ada borrowed N500 from Mama Peace, promising to repay in small amounts. The next morning, they went to the market together. Zuri's excitement made her steps quick. They bought a blue plastic bowl and filled it with sachets of pure water cooled in blocks of ice. From then on, their days began before sunrise. Zuri balanced the bowl carefully on her head, cold water dripping down her neck, while Ada, despite her swollen belly, carried a small tray of peppers wrapped in newspaper. They wove through the noise of Lagos, bus conductors shouting destinations, hawkers calling prices, engines rumbling like restless drums. "Pure water. Pure water." Zuri's voice rose above the traffic, loud enough to draw attention yet bright enough to make people smile. Some drivers bought several sachets and told her to keep the change. Others ignored her completely, rolling up their windows. There were light moments too, like the time a man in a suit asked why her water was so cold. Without pause, Zuri replied, "Because even water likes to feel fresh, sir." The man laughed so hard he bought 10. When the sun burned too hot, mother and daughter rested in the shade of a kiosk, sharing a sachet of water and talking about the future. "If we keep selling every day," Ada would say, counting coins, "in 2 months we can pay for one small room. No more sleeping under the bridge, and then I can go back to school," Zuri added, her eyes shining. Ada smiled, rubbing her belly. "You'll be a nurse or a lawyer, maybe even a doctor," Zuri laughed. "Or an astronaut." "An astronaut?" Ada chuckled. "Do you see a space shuttle in Lagos?" "No," Zuri grinned, "but I see stars every night. Maybe one day." These conversations became their private treasure, an island of hope in the restless city. The baby kicked more often now. Zuri pressed her hand to her mother's belly, speaking to her unborn sibling. "Hi, it's me, your big sister. Don't worry. When you come, we'll take care of you. Mommy and I are making plans." Ada would watch her and think of Chuka. How much he would have loved this moment, his 2 children united even before meeting. By nightfall, their feet ached, their voices were hoarse, and sweat clung to their skin. Still, they slept with the comfort of having earned something, however small. For the first time in a long while, Ada began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were moving out of the darkness. But fate had another plan waiting. It was a Saturday morning that began with promise. The sky glowed golden, the air buzzing with early traders setting up stalls. Ada tied her wrapper firmly, balancing her tray of peppers, while Zuri adjusted the blue bowl of chilled water on her head. Their plan was to sell everything before noon so they could rest under Mama Peace's stand and count their earnings. That morning felt almost joyful. Ada hummed one of her old church songs while Zuri skipped along, already skilled at calling out without straining her voice, already knowing which bus stops were busiest. By mid-morning, half their goods were gone. Ada suggested they cross to the market on the other side, where customers crowded near the fruit sellers. The traffic light at the junction turned red. Cars lined up in neat rows. They began to cross. The scream came just before the crash. An impatient driver, frustrated with the morning traffic, swerved recklessly around the cars. His sedan flashed past, its horn blaring too late. Zuri turned in time to see it. "Mommy!" she cried, but her voice was drowned by the roar of the engine. The car struck Ada's side, sending her tray of peppers flying into the air, a red shower scattering across the road. The impact threw her down, her wrapper twisting around her legs. The car did not stop. It sped away, slipping back into traffic like a predator fading into the shadows. For a brief moment, everything froze. Then chaos erupted. Zuri dropped her water bowl and ran, her bare feet slapping against the hot asphalt. She knelt beside her mother, her tiny hands shaking as she tried to lift her. "Mommy, please wake up." Ada's eyes fluttered open, pain clouding them. Blood streamed from her forehead and her breathing was shallow. "Zuri, the baby," she whispered weakly. "You'll both be okay," Zuri said, though fear gripped her chest. A crowd began to form. Voices rose, some in sympathy, others in irritation at the blockage. "Who had the accident?" "Hit and run. See the peppers all over." Two kind men stepped forward. "We need to take her to the hospital," one urged. "Help me lift her." Together they carried Aida to a waiting Kiki Napep. Zuri climbed in beside her mother, clutching her limp hand and whispering her name again and again. "Hold her head up," one man instructed. "We'll reach Beardsley Hospital quickly." The ride was a blur of jolts and sharp turns. With each bump, Zuri's heart pounded, afraid her mother was slipping further away. At the hospital, Zuri leapt out and ran to the reception desk. "Please, my mommy is hurt." A car hit her. "She's pregnant. Help us." The nurse barely looked up from her computer. "Accident case? Deposit first. $200. Zuri froze. "200? I don't have that. I only have 1,000 naira. She pulled out the crumpled notes. "Please start first. I'll find the rest." The nurse's expression stayed cold. "No deposit, no treatment. Hospital policy." "But she's dying." Zuri's voice cracked. "This isn't a charity," the nurse replied, already turning to the next patient. Desperate, Zuri rushed to the waiting area, begging strangers. "Please, my mother is pregnant. She needs help." A man in a suit frowned. "I don't give money to strangers." A woman clutching a Bible shook her head. "I will pray for you, dear," she said, walking away. By the time Zuri returned, the nurse stood with a security guard. "Take your mother elsewhere." "You can't block the corridor," the nurse said firmly. Zuri cried out, "I won't let her die." "You can't send us away." The guard stepped forward, reaching for her shoulder, when a tall man in a white coat appeared. He walked with calm authority, his face instantly recognizable from billboards. It was Dr. Josephi, the billionaire doctor. He stopped, his sharp eyes scanning the stretcher, the frightened girl, and the indifferent nurse. "What's going on here?" he asked. The nurse began, "Sir, this girl—" But Zuri rushed forward, clutching his coat. "Please, sir, help my mother. She was hit by a car. They want money before helping her, but I don't have it. Please, she's pregnant." Her voice broke. The guard tried to pull her away, but Dr. Joe raised his hand. "Leave her." He crouched down to meet Zuri's teary eyes. "Where's your mother?" "Here," Zuri sobbed, pointing at the stretcher. He turned sharply to the nurse. "Take her to the emergency room now." "But sir, a pregnant woman's life is at stake and you're asking for a deposit?" His voice was sharp and commanding. "Move her. Call the best surgeon. Prep the theater. This woman will not die because of paperwork." The nurse faltered under his glare. "Yes, sir." Relief washed over Zuri as the stretcher rolled toward the swinging doors. She looked up at Dr. Joe, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." He gave a small nod, but his eyes lingered on Aida's hand hanging limply off the stretcher. A crescent-shaped birthmark above her thumb caught his attention. Recognition flickered in his mind, but he pushed the thought aside. There was a life to save. The emergency room doors swung open, wheels squeaking as the stretcher rolled in. Nurses moved quickly, some glancing nervously at Dr. Joe, who followed like a silent authority. Zuri tried to go in, but a nurse blocked her. "Stay outside, little girl." "No, I must be with my mother." Dr. Joe turned. "Let her wait outside the theater doors," he instructed. Then he knelt to her level. "They'll do everything possible for her. I promise." Zuri searched his face for any sign of doubt, but found none. Trembling, she let the nurse guide her to a bench. Inside, clipped commands and the metallic sound of surgical tools echoed. Outside, time itself became the battle. Zuri sat hunched, elbows on her knees, hands pressed tightly together as if she could hold her mother's life in place. Her water bowl lay forgotten on the floor, ice melting into small puddles. A television played an old Nollywood film no one noticed. A man scrolled on his phone. A woman muttered prayers as she paced. But for Zuri, the world had narrowed to only two sounds. The steady thud of her own heart mixed with distant muffled activity beyond the theater doors. Every now and then she glanced up to see Dr. Joe walking past, once giving orders to a junior doctor, another time speaking in low, urgent tones on his phone. Each time his eyes flicked toward her briefly as if checking she was still there. Ada lying on that stretcher would not leave his mind. In his career he had treated many accident victims, broken bodies, failing pulses, the fragile line between life and death. But something about her face and the mark on her hand lodged in a place he thought closed. The crescent-shaped birthmark matched the one on his own hand. At that moment a childhood memory uncoiled. Him at 12, sitting by his mother while she sewed in their small shop. She had paused, her eyes filling, and told him about the sister he never knew. "You had a twin," she had whispered. "Two babies were born the same day, but one was stolen from me at the market when you were 2 years old. I only looked away for a moment to measure cloth, and when I looked back, she was gone. We searched until we could not search anymore. But she was never found." He had carried that story his whole life, a shadow through medical school and through building a hospital, through awards and headlines. He had accepted that if she lived, she was likely far away, living a life he would never touch. Now could this injured, penniless woman be her? He returned to the bench where Zuri sat, her head bowed. "What is your mother's name?" he asked quietly. "Adia Chuka," Zuri answered without hesitation. "Do you have family nearby? An aunt, grandparent?" Zuri's eyes darkened. "No. My father's people say my mother is a witch. My mother's people say she isn't their child. They say they bought her when she was small. Please, sir, we have no one." Dr. Joe studied her face. She was young, yet there was a quiet resilience in her eyes, as if she had already seen too much cruelty. "You will not have to pay anything for her treatment," he said firmly. Her lips trembled. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." Back in his office, the questions would not leave him. Could Ada be the missing sister? Could fate be this odd? He called his driver and sent a message to the lab at Best Medical Hospital. "Prepare a rapid DNA test for familial relation. Rush priority." Then he walked back into the ER after the surgeons had stabilized Ada. She lay under anesthesia, her breathing assisted by a machine, her face pale but still carrying the faint structure that matched his own. He stepped close to the bed, careful not to disturb the team. From his pocket he took a sterile swab. "Doctor?" a nurse asked. He gave a short nod. "Just collecting a sample for genetic purposes. Continue your work." Gently he swabbed the inside of Ada's cheek, sealed the sample in a vial, and slipped it into his coat pocket. Later he would take his own sample for comparison. The monitor in Ada's room now beeped a steady, reassuring rhythm. The harsh fluorescent lights had been dimmed. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and the lilies a kind nurse had placed on the windowsill. Zuri sat by her mother's bedside, her small hand wrapped protectively around Ada's fingers. Every so often she whispered, "I'm here, Mommy. It's okay," as if the words could anchor her. The door opened quietly and Dr. Joe stepped in. His white coat was gone, replaced by a dark blue shirt with sleeves rolled up. He looked tired but focused, the way someone looks when they are about to do something that might change their life. "How is she?" he asked softly. Zuri straightened. "She hasn't woken much, but the nurse said she's stable." He nodded. "Good. That's good." His gaze lingered on Ada for a long moment before he pulled a chair close. The DNA results still echoed in his mind. Full siblings, monozygotic, twins. For hours he had rehearsed how to tell them, when to tell them, whether they would believe him. Now sitting there, those rehearsed sentences dissolved. He reached out and gently turned Ada's right hand so the small crescent-shaped birthmark caught the light. Ada's eyelids fluttered open. Her voice was faint and hoarse from surgery. "Doctor?" she asked. "Yes, Ada, it's me. How are you feeling?" Her brows knit in confusion. Weak but grateful. "I know I have no money to pay for this. Please, sir, I promise I'll work. I'll pay little by little." He shook his head. "You owe me nothing." "Not for this," she frowned. "Then why? Why help us?" He hesitated, his thumb brushing the edge of her birthmark. "Because, Ada, you are more than just a patient to me." Her eyes searched his face. I don't understand. He spoke slowly. I know this will sound impossible, but I think you are my sister. My twin. The words hung between them. Ada blinked. You're what? He took a deep breath. When I was 2, my mother took my twin sister and me to the market. She turned her head for a moment to attend to a customer, and when she looked back, I was still there, but my sister was gone. Someone took you away. My parents searched everywhere, police stations, markets, villages. But you were gone. His voice softened. I grew up knowing a part of me was missing. I thought I would never find her. And then today I saw you. He gently turned her hand, showing a small crescent-shaped birthmark. I have the same mark, Ada. Exactly the same. She swallowed hard. That doesn't mean... I ran a DNA test, he interrupted quietly, locking eyes with her. The results came an hour ago. You are my twin, my blood, my family. For a moment, Ada's mind spun. She had lived 40 years not knowing who she truly was, rejected by the people she called her parents, told she was purchased like a forgotten item. And now this billionaire doctor was telling her she was his sister. Tears filled her eyes. All my life I believed I was unwanted, that I didn't belong anywhere, that maybe something was wrong with me since birth. And now you say I had a family all along? Yes, he said firmly, his own eyes wet. You were stolen from us, Ada. We never stopped being family, we were only torn apart. She turned away, biting her lip to stop it from trembling. But the tears broke free, soaking the pillow. Zuri, who had been listening silently, looked from one to the other, struggling to understand. So, Uncle, you're my mommy's brother? Dr. Joe smiled through his tears and reached for her hand. Yes, Zuri, that makes me your uncle. Ada let out a soft, broken laugh. 1 week I'm under a bridge, the next in a hospital bed. And now you tell me I'm related to one of the most powerful men in Lagos. This isn't about power, Ada, Joe said gently. It's about blood finding its way home. And now that I've found you, I won't let you go again. She studied his face. Do you remember our parents? He nodded. Mama is still alive. She's older now, but strong. I haven't told her yet. I wanted to be certain before giving her hope. When she hears, she'll cry tears you've never seen. Ada's eyes softened. She'll want to meet me. She never stopped praying for it. The silence that followed was heavy but comforting. The kind of silence where two lives begin to realign, where grief and joy exist together. Finally, Ada whispered, I thought God had forgotten me. But maybe he was only waiting for the right time. Joe smiled faintly. Maybe he was waiting for a little girl named Zuri to hold on to my coat and not let go. Ada touched her daughter's cheek. Do you hear that, my child? We are not alone anymore. Zuri smiled through her tears. Does that mean we'll have a house to live in? And I can go back to school? Joe reached across and squeezed her hand. Not just a house, Zuri, a home. And yes, you'll go to the best school in the city. You'll have everything you need to dream. Ada shook her head slowly, still overwhelmed. I came here thinking I had nothing left, and now I have a brother, a future for my children, and a reason to smile again. Joe's voice thickened. You have more than that. You have family who will never let you fall again. She reached for his hand. Their fingers interlocked naturally, as if they had done it 1,000 times before. Then promise me, Joe. Promise we won't lose each other again. I promise, he said without hesitation. And in that hospital room, under the hum of machines and faint scent of lilies, a family broken for 40 years began to heal. The day Ada went into labor came sooner than expected. It was early morning, the hospital quiet except for the squeak of nurses' shoes. Zuri had been sleeping in a chair when she felt her mother squeeze her hand. She woke to see Ada's face tight with pain. Mommy, she cried. Ada breathed deeply. It's time. Within minutes, nurses rushed in, checking vitals and preparing the delivery room. Zuri was taken outside, her hands twisting anxiously. Dr. Joe arrived still in shirt and trousers from an overnight meeting, his tie loose. Seeing Zuri's worried face, he knelt. She's in good hands. I'll be here the whole time. For 2 hours, Zuri sat sipping juice she couldn't taste, straining for news. Finally, a smiling nurse appeared. Congratulations. Your mother has delivered a healthy baby boy. Zuri's heart soared. She rushed inside moments later. Ada lay exhausted but glowing, a small bundle in her arms. She tilted it toward Zuri. Meet your brother. Zuri leaned in, her eyes wide as the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around hers with surprising strength. He's so small, she whispered. And perfect, Dr. Joe added, smiling. Both of them are strong and healthy. For a while, the room was filled with the baby's soft sounds and the quiet laughter of two women, one who carried him, and the other who had only just found them. 2 days later, Ada was discharged. But this time, instead of returning to a bridge or shelter, a sleek black SUV waited. Zuri looked up at Dr. Joe, uncertain. Where are we going? To your new home, he said simply. The drive to Ikoyi felt like entering another world. Streets widened, houses grew larger, the air calmer. When the SUV stopped in front of a cream-colored mansion with palm trees swaying at the gate, Zuri gasped. Is this yours? She whispered. Ours, Joe corrected. The gate opened and they drove into a vast compound. House staff waited, their faces curious but kind. Joe addressed them firmly. This is my sister Ada. Her children are my family. From today, treat them as essential, as life itself. Inside, the house carried the gentle scent of fresh flowers and polished wood. The living room opened wide, furnished with soft cream sofas, glass tables, and a chandelier shining like a cluster of stars. Zuri's feet sank into the thick carpet as she followed her mother upstairs. 2 bedrooms were prepared, one for Ada and the baby and another for Zuri. When Zuri opened her door, she froze. The walls were painted a soft pastel blue. A bed with a cloud-like duvet stood waiting, along with a desk neatly stocked with new notebooks and pens. A wardrobe already held clothes in her size. On the bed sat a backpack decorated with tiny golden stars. She turned to Joe, eyes filling with tears. This is all for me? She whispered. He smiled. For the brave girl who grabbed my coat and wouldn't let go. The next morning, Zuri woke to the smell of warm pancakes drizzled with honey and topped with slices of fruit. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, glancing now and then at her uncle as if to confirm he was still there, still real. After breakfast, Joe made an announcement. Today we're visiting some schools. Zuri, you'll get to choose the one you like best. Her mouth fell open. I can go back to school? Not just back to school, Joe assured her, but to a place where you'll have everything you need to dream as big as you want. That day, they visited 3 schools. The last one, with tall iron gates and wide green fields, captured Zuri's heart immediately. She watched children in crisp uniforms laughing together, teachers speaking kindly, and a library larger than the market where she once sold water. The principal welcomed them warmly, shaking Joe's hand. We'll arrange everything right away, she said. She can start next week. That night, Zuri lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her mind drifted to the bridge, the cold nights, and the rain seeping through cracks. She remembered Mama P slipping her pieces of akara and thought about how, in just 1 week, her life had completely changed. Meanwhile, Ada was adjusting to a life she had never imagined. The baby had a crib filled with soft blankets and tiny clothes. There was always food in the kitchen and help whenever she needed it. But more than comfort, there was peace, the kind she hadn't felt since Chuka's passing. Some evenings, she and Joe sat on the veranda, the baby asleep beside them, sharing quiet conversations. I keep thinking of our mother, Ada said softly one night. How she must have felt all those years not knowing where I was. Joe's eyes softened. Ada, it will be the happiest day of her life when she sees you again. Ada looked at her sleeping son, then at her daughter's laughter echoing from upstairs. Maybe God didn't forget me after all. A week later, Zuri's first day of school arrived. Dressed in a crisp white shirt, a neatly pressed skirt, polished shoes, and her star-embroidered backpack, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. At the school gate, Joe crouched to her level. Remember, Zuri, you belong here. Walk in with your head high. She nodded, gripping her backpack strap tightly. That afternoon, she returned home buzzing with stories about the new friends she had made, the teacher who gave her a book to take home, and the math problems she had solved correctly. That night, curling up in bed, she whispered to her baby brother, "We're going to be okay now. I promise." At her door, Joe stood quietly watching. He thought about the chance encounter that had brought them together. How if he had taken a different route that day, or if Zuri had been too shy to grab his coat, they might have passed without knowing. But fate had not allowed it. And now, as the city outside carried on with its noise and chaos, this house was filled with warmth, family, and the certainty that they would never again be alone. For Ada, Zuri and the baby sleeping peacefully in the next room, the long season of hardship was over. It was the beginning of a new chapter. one filled with safety, love, and the steady promise of better days. The lesson in this story is simple. Compassion can transform lives. Family is not only about blood, but about the love and care we give one another. Even in life's darkest moments, kindness, persistence, and the courage to ask for help can open doors we never thought possible. Fate may take its time, but when it arrives, it restores what was lost and often brings even more than we hoped for. We hope you enjoyed this story. Share your thoughts and lessons in the comments. We love reading them. And here's something exciting. In just a few days, we'll bring you another powerful story you won't want to miss. So if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to be the first to watch when it's uploaded. If this story touched your heart, give it a thumbs up and share it with family and friends so they can be inspired too. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you abundantly.